Hello, Paul here for WhisperCool Wine Cellar Cooling Units. In this video, I'm going to talk about troubleshooting procedures for WhisperCool's XLT series cooling units. We'll talk about the different issues that can occur and how to determine what the cause might be. I'll go over what you can do to get your cooling unit back on track and when it's time to call customer service. You'll see the customer service phone number on screen throughout the video. As always, WhisperCool recommends that you consult a wine cellar professional for specific advice on best practices in wine cellaring. First, let me say a few words about ventilation, because unobstructed airflow to and from the unit is critical to the cooling unit's performance, and most cooling unit problems begin with poor ventilation. The unit must vent to a large open area both in front and behind for proper air circulation. Don't run any pipes or ducting behind the unit once it is installed. Also, don't try to camouflage the unit by building racking in front of it or by attaching a decorative grill to the exhaust side, as this will obstruct the airflow. Mount the unit no lower than 18 inches from the ceiling so that the unit can capture and cool the rising warm air in the cellar. The space that the unit exhausts to must be larger than the wine cellar, and for best practices, it should have an exhaust fan and a fresh air inlet for proper heat dissipation. Now, let's talk about what to do if your cooling unit is just not running. You flip the switch to on, but nothing happens. First, newer XLT units have two power inlets and a front-rear power switch, where front is the cellar side and rear is the exhaust side. Check the power switch and make sure that you have the correct inlet selected. Remember that there is a 5-minute delay from the time you turn on the unit until the fans begin to spin, so make sure you wait and see if your unit will function. If there is not activity after 5 minutes, run the bypass test. Turn the unit off before you run this test, and before you run any test, conduct any maintenance or follow any troubleshooting procedures that don't require the unit to be running. Remove the thermostat cover and unplug it, and connect the bypass plug. If the unit turns on, that means you have a problem with your thermostat, and you need to call customer service. Make sure that you did not connect your unit to a GFI. Also, if you didn't wire in a dedicated 20 amp circuit for your cooling unit, it may not be able to draw enough electricity to power the unit. Unplug any appliances that might be on the same circuit and make sure you have a dedicated circuit installed as soon as possible. For added protection, you should run the unit through a single appliance surge protector, like this one. There's also another way to test your thermostat. When you first turn it on, press and hold the up arrow. The PDT should show a 5-minute countdown to the unit turning on. If the display does not show the countdown, or if the unit does not turn on when the countdown finishes, the thermostat needs to be repaired or replaced. What if your unit is running, but it's not cooling the cellar? If your unit is not cooling to 55 degrees, and you've confirmed this with a separate thermometer, there are a few things you need to do. But first, let's take a look at the position of the cooling unit in the cellar. If the cooling unit is not mounted high on the wall near the ceiling, it will not be able to circulate the rising hot air, and you won't get proper performance from the unit. Also, check the owner's manual to make sure that your cooling unit is rated to cool the number of cubic feet in your cellar. If your cellar is larger than the unit specifications will allow, you need to upgrade your unit. Even if your cubic footage is within the specs, remember that building materials like glass, cement, stone, tile, brick, and others will absorb the cool air or transfer heat from the outside to create an additional draw on the cooling unit. And if the intake air temperature from the exhaust room rises above 85 degrees, the unit will not be able to cool to 55 degrees because it only cools 30 degrees cooler than the intake air. This is a leading cause of inefficient performance for the XLT. And if the intake air is anywhere close to 80 or 85 degrees, you should consider installing the XLT ducting kit with the inline fan to help with ventilation and heat dissipation. Our first troubleshooting step will be to clean the coils and perform any general maintenance that is prescribed for your cooling unit. To clean the coils, use a vacuum with a brush attachment. Vacuum the surface of the grill in an up and down motion and remove any dust or lint that has accumulated. Clean the grills on both the condenser side and the evaporator side and vacuum the fans also. We do this because dirt on the coils acts as an airflow obstruction, which makes your unit work harder to achieve proper performance. Remember to perform these steps every 3 months as regular maintenance. Next, you should run the bypass test that we just showed. Also, there's another way to test your thermostat. Press and hold the down arrow while the unit is running. You should see a 90-minute countdown on the display. because the unit will only run for a maximum of 90 minutes at a time. If there is no countdown, or if the unit does not turn off at the end of the countdown, then you have a thermostat problem. Also, check to see if all of the fans are blowing and if they appear to be turning at the same speed. The best way to know if your unit is working is if heat is exhausting out the back side. If you feel warm air blowing out the back, your unit is functioning properly, and you need to consider any installation and ventilation issues. If you call customer service, they'll ask you to perform a temperature test. Take a thermometer like this one that you would normally use to test the temperature of cooked meat. Take the temperature of the unit in 3 places: in the center of the condenser coil, in the center of the evaporator coil, and in front of the fans. Don't tape the thermometer to the unit or you can get a bad reading. Just hold it in place until you get an accurate reading. Also, check your thermostat for error codes. For instance, if you see a PRB code, this means that the liquid temperature probe is not properly connected. To fix this, remove the thermostat and make sure that the plug is secure in the socket. Sometimes we get calls from customers who report that their cooling unit is leaking water. If your XLT was built in October 2006 or earlier and it is leaking from the front fans, the internal drain line might be clogged and you should call customer service for instructions. Models that are newer than October 2006 don't have an internal drain line. If the unit is leaking from the bottom rear of the unit, remove the drain line and remount the port with a pipe cleaner. Make sure that the drain line is not kinked, crimped, or looped when you reinstall it. The drain line should hang straight down. Don't allow the bottom end of the drain line to become submerged in liquid, as the back pressure from the submerged line can cause leaking at the top. Don't plug or cap the drain line on any model XLT. Next, check to see if the mounting hole is properly insulated. If you have any warm air flowing back in through the mounting hole, the difference in temperature can cause condensation, which can lead to leaking. Remember that the unit must be level with the ground, and any tilting could cause leaking. You should also check the coils for icing. If there's any ice, it can melt and cause leaking during any time when the unit is not running. If you find ice, now you know the cause of your leaking, but we need to troubleshoot the ice problem. So let's talk about that next. Make sure that you do not mount the unit on a shelf due to the 45-degree angle of the fans. If the fans are blocked, ice can form on the evaporator and the grill. If you find ice on your cooling unit, turn it off for 36 hours to allow the ice to melt. Be sure to use towels or a bucket to catch the water as the ice melts. In the meantime, clean the coils and check the fans like we did earlier. Check to see if there is anything blocking the exhaust, as this is the leading cause of icing. If you have attached a decorative grill or placed a plant in front of the exhaust area to hide the unit, you're obstructing the airflow. Don't forget that the liquid temperature probe needs to be securely corked into a wine bottle 3/4 full of regular tap water that is stored in the center of the racking. Reading air temperature instead of liquid temperature can cause the system to run continuously, which leads to icing. The liquid temperature probe should be at least 2 feet away from the unit for proper operation. If you're still having problems, run the bypass test for 6 to 10 hours. If the air in front of the fans is colder than 50 degrees during the test and no ice develops, you probably have an issue with your thermostat. If ice does develop or your unit cannot blow colder than 50 degrees during the test, you may have an issue with your refrigerant. Don't run the bypass test longer than 24 hours or you could damage the unit. Let customer service know the results of your test and they'll tell you how to proceed. We've covered the most common issues with the XLT, but there are always other situations that can arise, so call us anytime that your cooling unit is not functioning as it should. Be sure to watch our other instructional videos on wine cellar cooling. See you next time.